So I want to start this video by reading you a few lines from a song. It goes like this. It says, "Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Well, I've been afraid of changing." And that is a song called Landslide by the band Fleetwood Mac. And that is really what this video is going to be about. Not the song, though it's a great song. It's going to be about changing and how difficult change can be, specifically for your team as it relates to implementing new tools or softwares. Before we get into that though, I do want to say my name is Ryan Holguin. I am a project management professional. This is the practical place where we like to say where project management meets real life. So if you're an aspiring project manager or professional just looking to grow and add more tools to your tool belt, I would encourage you to subscribe. I have 293 other people that would vouch for me as well. I appreciate everybody that's subscribed here. I like to talk about project management, professional and personal development, as well as data, sports, and analytics and things like that. So if anything like that interests you, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button. But let's get into the video. So today I do want to talk about implementing new tools and software to your team as a project manager or as somebody that just has a team and people that they need to, that report to them, and they need to get them on board with new tools and softwares. And I kind of want to break this down into three different sort of categories, if you will. And the first one is being, it is a requirement of your company. So an example like this would be like a new ERP system, a new project management software platform that you guys are going to be using, anything like that. You guys are adopting Microsoft 365. And so this one's a lot easier in the sense of it's very clear cut, it's very direct. The company is implementing this and enforcing it because they're paying a lot of money. And so as a project manager, what I found helpful is to really just empathize with your team and understand where everybody is at. You're going to have a wide spectrum of people, from early adopters to just late bloomers, of people that really are going to be resistant to change, some that are really excited about that. So it's really important as a project manager that you've been doing this before, but if you're not, start doing it now, which is understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team. So in my experience and what I've learned is that not everybody necessarily cares about a lot of the company goals. Now, that's not to say that they don't care about doing a good job. That's just to say, hey, I just want to come in, do my job, and go home. And that's totally fine. And then a company comes in and says, hey, we got to shift up the way you're doing things by implementing this new project management software. And that can be really hard for a lot of people, because if you watch my last video about the mere exposure effect, that we are all familiar and we prefer things we are familiar with. And so whenever a company comes in or a change is implemented that's enforced from the top down, it's really difficult sometimes for people to get on board. And I would say, as a project manager, if you want to be a leader for your team and lead by example, it's important for you. One, this is my encouragement. You can do whatever you want, but what I found helpful is become an early adopter early on. So there's going to be probably a season whenever you're questioning, why are we doing this? I don't agree with it. The way that we were doing things before was working. It was just fine. Why are we changing it? But all those questions, once you just get to the point where you accept that this is a change, it's going to happen, the smoother it's going to go from there. And I found that to be really helpful for me in trying to encourage my team that, hey, this isn't fun. It's not going to be great. It's going to be bumpy at first, and that's okay. I'm here to help you. I'm here to advocate for you. I'm here to help and learn the tool as best I can so that I can best equip you or serve you when you guys need that help. And just understand that. And if there are folks that are early adopters or are really savvy with learning new technology, I would say to cultivate that and encourage them to help their team. And sometimes your team needs to hear it from different perspectives. And so if you can start to get more and more adopters of the software as early as possible, then some of those late bloomers might just understand and accept the fact this is happening. My teammates are doing this, so I got to go ahead and do that. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Every person and every human is individually unique. So I understand that. So this is sort of just a broad brush approach that I'm giving you here. How you go about doing that is kind of up to you based on your environment and how your team functions. But generally speaking, I think the heart should be one of empathy and understanding where your team's coming from, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. And it's really easy just to say, well, the company's making us do this, but also understand the software better. One of the things, a practical tool I like to do is really understand the tool and understand what it can't do, and explain that to my team and say, from the gate, a lot of times when you're introducing a new software or a new system or a new tool, critics of it or people resistant to change are going to have all these sorts of why this isn't going to work, and they're going to be ready to say those things. But if I come out of the gate saying, here's what it's not going to do, and I try to already sort of combat those rebuttals that I know I might get, it's going to allow them to let their guard down a little bit, because I already acknowledge the fact I know it's not going to track it the same exact way we used to do it. I know it's not going to be it's not going to send notifications the way we're used to. It's not going to do X and Y and Z or whatever, right? It's going to really allow them to let their guard down. So so that's category number one. Whenever it's required by your company or it's a directive from the top down, we all have to accept that. The quicker we accept it, the smoother it'll go. Have empathy and understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team. Category two is a little bit more nuanced. It's whenever a software or a tool is not necessarily required or directed, but it's something that's encouraged or really needed to accomplish a certain goal. So let me break that down. Let's say an example is your manager comes to you and says, hey, we need to start tracking this metric here, right? We need to track how quickly we're reaching each milestone in our project so that we can see the summation of our project durations. So before, you were only measuring start to finish project durations, right? Really easy, really straightforward, but that really wasn't giving you the metrics or insight that your manager wanted. So they wanted to start measuring, hey, whenever we get this kicked off, whenever we hit milestone A, how long does that take us? And then from milestone A to B, how long does that take us? And then from B to finish, to finalizing that project, how long does that take us? So now you're starting to measure milestone checkpoints and how long it's taking so that you can see if there's bottlenecks and things like that. So same process, your team's doing the same process, but now you're required to start measuring additional milestones for your manager. So the thing where it gets nuanced is he or she's not necessarily telling you here's exactly how you do it, but they're saying we need to do this, and now it's up to you to figure out how to do that. There's multiple ways you can go about doing that, but I think one of the things is important to communicate to your team why this is beneficial for the company, right? We need to start measuring and identifying where we're having bottlenecks because this is causing issues, and this is something that you're already doing. All we're needing to do is log the information, right? Log a date is all I need you to do. And you come from this place of, again, empathy is sort of at the root of a lot of this, at the heart of a lot of this, right? You want to understand where your team's coming from. Everybody's busy. It's one thing to not just do the work, it's another thing to also manage a schedule or to track the work. That's really an administrative sort of a part of the role that nobody loves doing. But as a project manager, that's sort of our bread and butter. We're managing project plans, we're managing schedules, we're looking at all these sorts of things. So it's sort of on us to understand where we're at in the schedule, where our teams are at, and how they're performing. And sometimes when I've implemented these sorts of changes where we've had to track new sort of items we didn't track before, I might start doing that work for them initially to show them how it's done. So I don't mind doing that. I pride myself on not being afraid of just getting down in the weeds and getting dirty and getting the work done myself. But I also have to make a priority to slowly transition to allowing my team to do it as well. And so yeah, that's kind of a really nuanced sort of category to where there's a strategy or there's an initiative you need to meet, but there's not necessarily how the how explained. You kind of have to figure that out yourself, and then you really have to justify it to your team and tell them why this sort of additional step in their process has to be done now. And it's harder to explain because it's not required by the director or the manager. The manager didn't say we're doing it this way. It's you sort of being confident in your abilities and what you're saying. And so honestly, whenever you sort of understand your processes and you understand how projects work in your organization, you'll probably have better insight to tell them why it's so important and how it's actually going to be beneficial to them. That's another sort of aspect of this. You want to be able to show them the value it's actually bringing to them. It doesn't land as well. You think it would, right? That you could say, hey, it's going to be really good for the company and they want to see these metrics. Yeah, it doesn't always work that way. They're not always thrilled about that. And so you explain that, but you also say, here are some ways I can actually see it benefiting us. If we identify from A to B, a milestone A to B, that there's a bottleneck, well, who are the stakeholders involved there? Maybe we need to go talk to that team and they're holding us up. And then maybe your team says, that's what I've been trying to say, that this team has not been able to give me a sign off and I've always been held up there. But now we can actually measure that. And when you start to, that light bulb comes off and they can see, oh, This is actually going to empower me to have conversations with my team, because then I'll have real data to bring to that team to talk to them about how we need to streamline this process. So that's category number 2. So number 1, as a quick review, is whenever it is a directive or implemented from the top down from your organization. So it is required. You need to have empathy, understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team, and kind of approach it very slowly. Number 2 is more nuanced, whenever you told what we need to accomplish, but not necessarily how we need to accomplish. So that comes in the form of implementing a new tool or feature or step in somebody's process. Number 3 is more of on a personal level, and it's just your own personal preference. And so this isn't required by our manager. This isn't encouraged by the company or required by the company, but this is just something you found productive in your own sort of workflow, and you want to try to get your team to do that. I've done this in the past, and it's really never worked in the sense of like trying to encourage people to work the way that I work. As I say that, it sounds really arrogant. Well, we'll just work the way I work. But at the time, you just think you're trying to help people, but really everybody's different, and everybody has a different workflow, and busy is different to everybody, and prioritizing is different for everybody, and that's okay. And just understanding that it's okay is fine. I'm just a huge believer in the proof is going to be in the pudding. So people will recognize you if you are really efficient, if you're really on top of things, and that hopefully will start to create curiosity in your team, and they'll say, how do you answer my emails so quickly? I just always feel like I'm drowning in my emails. Well, let me tell you how I use the rules function in Outlook. Let me show you how to do it and how it helps keep my Outlook organized and my email organized. Let me tell you about that. Man, you take really good notes, or like, what note-taking platform do you use? Oh, I've been using Word. And I can say, well, I use Notion. I really find it helpful. I can create to-do lists. I can save all my notes and reference back to another note really easily in that tool. But it's not ever something I want to push on anybody else, because again, everybody's different. And although you might see sort of weaknesses in your team of organization or efficiency, I would say it's not necessary, and it's different for everybody, but in my context or in my experience, I don't think it's necessarily my role to step in and say, hey, here's how I do it, now do it like me. I think everybody should still have the freedom to be able to work how they choose to work, as long as they're getting their stuff done, right? Now, as far as like performance and optimization and efficiency, everybody's going to be in different places, right? But if they see that you're working at a super high level, that might start to create some curiosity in them. How does this person get these things done so quickly? How do they organize their things so quickly? An example, sort of success story, I guess, is when I would take on a project and sort of support my team and take something off their plate, I would build a project plan for it, because that's just the way my mind works. And I would sort of map out every single step in the process. And that really frees me up to not stress about where the project's at. I can always just open the project plan and know exactly where we're at. And there's nothing I need to do right now because it's with this other team, right? But some people don't want to use a project plan, and that's totally fine. They can do that. But some of the team members were getting just overwhelmed with their own projects and stressed out, not knowing where things were at. And it was just kind of by word of mouth ended up getting to them that I was using the project plan, and they asked if I could send one over to them, and I sent it over to them, and they started using it. And they had a testimony then at that point of how beneficial using this project plan was. And it was just something I was doing in my own personal projects, but it ended up being beneficial to somebody else. And it wasn't something I necessarily was evangelizing. Hey, everybody use a project plan. I would talk about it if it got on topic, but I never try to push it on anybody, because again, it's not required. It's not mandated by the company. It was just my own personal preference, and I thought it was really helpful, but maybe it would cause more of an issue for somebody else. And so that's one way where I felt like the proof was in the pudding. Like I was working at a certain pace, and it worked really well. And I got results from it, and then others started to notice that, and they were yearning for that sort of productivity, and then they started to find it beneficial as well. And so allow the work to speak for itself, allow the efficiency to speak for itself, and talk about it when it's in an organic conversation on that topic, but don't try to bring it up and don't try to push that on other people. So a quick review is, number 1 is whenever it is a top-down implementation of a new tool or software, you got to do it, but as a project manager or as a leader in your organization, you do it with empathy and understanding where each team member is at. Number 2 is you're told what needs to be accomplished, but not necessarily how. And the how you've identified is implementing a new tool or implementing a new step in the process. And so to do that, again, with empathy, understanding and communicating how that's going to be beneficial to your team. So really know the value it's going to bring to them before you sort of tell them or encourage them to start doing it. And then number 3 is just personal preference. We have a lot of ways we work that are productive and really boost our own efficiency, but everybody works at a different pace. Try to talk about it whenever things come up in an organic conversation, but don't try to push it or force it on anybody because it's really not required. So let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Did I miss any other sort of categories? I was just thinking of 3 different sort of buckets I could categorize each sort of instance in, but what is your experience as a project manager or as a professional, or maybe you're a more seasoned leader than I am, of implementing new tools and softwares in any sort of scenario? What have you found helpful? What have you found really unhelpful? Share that in the comments below. I would really appreciate if this was like a community that relied on each other, that helped each other, because I think about when I was younger in my career, I didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of. And so I want this to be that sort of community where we can bounce ideas off of each other. So if you're a subscriber, be one of those leaders in the comments and tell folks how you have found success in implementing new tools and softwares for your team. So if you found this video helpful, do not forget to give it a like. I would really appreciate that, and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. That's going to do it for today. My name is Ryan Holguin, again, here with The Practical Place, where project management meets real life. I will see you in the next video.